Can you end austerity and balance the budget?
Well, you've just given away something there, which is that the budget has never been balanced.
But my understanding is it's still government policy to balance the budget.
Yes, yes.
The date keeps on being pushed back, I know that.
But
that still seems to be policy.
What I'm challenging is the definition of austerity. So it turns out that in all these years, when we're alleged to have had austerity, we've actually been living beyond our means. That every year we've been running a deficit. Every year we've been spending more on public services and on welfare and on everything else than the money that has been coming in.
Yeah,
I think
like when you were in government.
I think you mentioned that the deficit is might come down to 1% on the most.
About 1.2 if the projections are accurate.
On the most optimistic estimates. Now, Italy is setting a budget of a 2%.
2.4.
2.4. And is being hauled over the coals by the European Union because that is regarded as a profligate budget. So your question is absolutely to the point. Can we balance the budget and get rid of austerity? It seems that if people are going to define austerity as a situation where the country is borrowing something between 13% and 1.5% each year, living beyond our means, passing that level of debt down to future generations, if people are calling that austerity, then clearly we can't balance the budget and not have austerity.
I think Michael's actually hit on a point there, which is that austerity doesn't work. It's counterproductive. And this is why we're seeing, the fact that the deficit hasn't been eliminated. It was supposed to be eliminated in 2015, then it was 2018, and we're still here having the same questions over and over again. And it's because we've taken money out of the productive base of the economy. It would be like, a business saying, a bar, I'm going through hard times, so I'm selling all my bar stools, I'm going to close an extra day a week, and, I'm going to stop selling the more expensive beer. And ultimately, you get to a point where that reduces your revenues, and then the business fails even more, and then you have to cut even more. And that's effectively what we've seen with austerity to begin with.
But another metaphor would be that the policy you're advocating is like a family saying, well, we don't have any money, we're living beyond our means, so what we ought to do is borrow much more. And what we'll do is we'll call it investing.
What Theresa May's done.
So we'll borrow a whole lot of money and we'll spend it on this, that and the other, and we'll pretend that that's going to raise our productive capital.
Well, what Theresa May's done is saying, we're a family.
I was discussing what you want.
Let's take that metaphor further, shall we? Theresa May, we're in this family, we're spending more than we're earning. What are we going to do? OK, we're going to stop feeding our children and we're going to stop paying our rent. 8 years down the line, the kids are dead and we've been kicked out of our house. But, hey, at least we haven't got, we're not spending more than we're earning anymore. It's just, what is the aim? The aim of the economic policy is supposed to build a fair and just society.
You think it's more sensible for this family that ought to live within its means to borrow much more and to kid itself that it's investing in productive capacity?
That's what we've done since, 18th century and before. We've always done that. Your government did that.
There's no... it is... And yeah,
this idea, that you live within your means.
But there is this inherent morality that you pass it on to a later generation
but that's the deficit.
To pay off your debts.
But Labour aren't saying we are not going to reduce the deficit. In fact, I heard John McDonnell say this morning, we are continuing to reduce deficit. It's the way you do it. And the way Osborne did it, stifled growth. I mean, growth was going to return. If you replace every civil servant in the Treasury with a sack of spuds, growth would eventually return to the economy. The trick was getting it done more quickly.
The government still seems to want to balance the budget, and that, you can argue whether that's the right thing to do when the deficit's now pretty low. What, in your view, should be the fiscal constraint on Labour?
So I think there are a couple of ways of looking at this. A really severe problem we've got since Osborne has been that he's lumped investment spending in with current spending. And investment spending is very obviously, on any measure, generally has a multiplier that's larger than 1. So when you spend a little bit, you get that amount or a little bit more in returns down the line. It's like you build a road. Businesses accumulate around that road. They pay taxes.
But what
you build
would
a
the fiscal
university.
Constraint be?
Well, so with borrowing to invest, you shouldn't really need one as long as you're doing that sensibly. And, with regards to...
So there'd be no limit on how much you borrowed to invest?
Well, there are obviously limits, but those limits they're quite big. Look at the amount that China's borrowed to expand its... The entire expansion of the Chinese economy, basically since the crash, has been driven by its own government investment, right? And sure, China is now reaching a peak whereby it should probably stop borrowing to invest. But that's shown the amount of space that governments can create by by borrowing to build things that we need. You had a second ago, they're being mentioned the American government's military program to build the internet. These are the kinds of innovations that we need public spending in order to facilitate, and we just haven't got that at the moment.
We're going to have to leave it there. Grace, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.